And here we are. Welcome, welcome everybody in the future and in the past and in the now. Ooh, let me just turn that down there. Howdy everyone in the chat, Marshall and Tyler. I guess it's just us today, boys. I'm sure everyone else will arrive soon. Just hearing about Marshall's astrology chart and Tyler's new restaurant. Hey, surf. When are we going to do late night rituals in VR? That's later. That'll be the next stretch goal. Alrighty. Now, last week we were throbbing right there. I think it's just a little bit good. Maybe we'll just like a slight recap. Gurdjieff had this amazing understanding. He was talking about understanding and knowing, basically, and we just stopped right in the middle because it was getting late. But you got to understand how important it is, what he was talking about. He was talking about the path in a truly Gnostic way. In a sense of, you know how they say, enlightenment or knowledge or truth will set you free. It's like, what does that even mean? Do you just, someone tells you something and the data goes in and then it's like poof? But he's giving a description of the difference between just mere data coming in and gnosis, which he calls reason knowing and reason understanding. And it's like the reason knowing, from what I understood of what Gurdjieff was saying, was when an impression comes from the exterior world and enters one of your cylinders, and then an antithesis, another impression enters in, and maybe there's a synthesis in the cylinder itself. And that's just it. It's like, that's reason knowing. Like, random stuff comes from the outside world and collides with the other impressions in you, and then it just kind of sits in a random place inside you. That's just knowing. That's the normal reason knowing that normies have. That's all normies are, is a bunch of random impressions. What reason understanding is when you have this balanced machine and an impression from the outside comes and strikes and you're able to have it process hit all of the cylinders at the same time. Hello, Kimberly. So it's hitting all the cylinders at the same time, and then the secret third thing, the consciousness itself, is like this, the third primary force. So it's like you have the cylinders themselves being, I guess, the denying force, the impression being the active, affirming force, and they come together, and then the neutralizing force, the consciousness itself. And you get this understanding, and it's so amazing. And by the way, I say the consciousness itself, but the terms he used is, well, let's just go up here. What is it? Yeah, he was talking about the being autokolizikners, and he basically says that being autokolizikners is just there if you've got park dog being duty down pat, which basically means if the cylinders are balanced and you're self-remembering. Another guy, yo. Welcome, another guy. Oh, and and so it's this really interesting thing. This is basically what Gnostic knowledge is. This is what it means to know something. It's when something comes into you and it becomes a part of your being, real. It just sinks in you proper. And this being understanding is so interesting. And so by park dog being duty, it implies that you're, self-remembering, the consciousness is there observing what's going on anyway. And so, and then like as this process happens, as this knowledge comes in and this process happens, you get this Zerno-Kuf-Falknian friction. In other words, this friction, the forces within you, this friction basically forces apart the Abthrudonus and the Helkdonus so your body can then process and then coat higher being bodies. And it's like, this is amazing. This is amazing because it's a direct thing. Hold on. We got Dylan in the chat with a new name again. Elven Industrial Complex 009. Welcome, Dylan. Lamau. But this is amazing because it's like, it's not just you changed your political opinion. It's not just, oh, you took the red pill. It's not just you thought one thing and now you think another, and that means you're enlightened, or you've accepted a new belief. I accepted Jesus. I believe in Jesus and therefore I'm saved. Poof, magic, all your sins go away. It's like, no, it's this process of learning, of gaining gnosis, and he's breaking down exactly why psychologically but the psychologically connects to an energetic thing, and the energetic thing, macrocosmos, microcosmos, has this impact on the whole, not just you and your creation of higher being bodies, but then on the whole cosmos. The release of Abdurus Donus and Helk Donus allows the Askokan to process, which the world can then balance. And then as you crystallize higher being bodies, that helps God fight time. And it's like, oh my God, it's all connecting. All the peepees are touching. This is glorious. This is glorious. This is like this book where Beelzebub is just laying out all this random stuff. It's finally all coming together and all the peepees are touching. It's amazing. So let's just get right into it, guys. So from where we left off, I think we stopped here. So he says, and therefore, new data of every kind, because I think he was talking about normie knowing, normie reason knowing. It just settles randomly in the body. And then chiefly for this reason that everything which has been learned settles in the presences of three-brained beings who only have reason knowing, always remains only simply as information, without any kind of cognizance by the whole of their being. So it's just information. It comes and it sits in there for a while, and then it's either replaced by new information, a new opinion, or it just evaporates into nothing and they forget it. But if the whole of your being participates in this knowing, that's gnosis, that's understanding, that's the peepee touch. And that's actually, that actually has an effect on everything. And therefore, new data of every kind, formed and fixed in this way for the three-brained beings who have the reason of knowing, have in respect of their use no significance at all for the welfare of their own subsequent existence. Moreover, the duration of the decrystallization of this kind of fixed impressions depends on the quantity and the quality of the impulses engendered in the given being. As regards this latter fact, ensuing from the already degenerated functioning of the reason proper, so the reason's already the being reason's already degenerated, so it's like it's even worse than normal. Proper to the three-brained beings, and which most of your contemporary favorites today have. One also very rarely used saying of our respected teacher Mullah Nasr ad-Din is remembered in me by association and is expressed by the following words: as soon as anything is needed, it seems that it is filthy and eaten by mice. We always got to contemplate and reflect on these Mullah Nasr ad-Din sayings. Although every kind of what your favorites call knowledge, which they have, and which has been acquired in the common presences of beings in the said manner, is also subjective, yet it has absolutely nothing in common with what is called objective knowledge. So this is Gurdjieff's idea of objective knowledge, is when it just, you get this understanding and your whole being cognizes it. Whereas just normie subjective knowledge with reason knowing, that's just it coming in and bouncing off and going randomly in your body. And really, and this is why you shouldn't trust the experts. Because experts nowadays, maybe some of them, like this is just it, what makes a real expert is someone who has objective knowledge via Gurdjieff standing. In other words, it's someone who has real being understanding, reason understanding. Most people who claim to be experts now are just people who have a lot of reason knowing, and they're just autistically absorbing impressions and letting thesis antithesis bounce off inside them. And basically they're what Gurdjieff would call wiseacring. They're doing wiseacring. They're not actually thinking. They seem to be experts, but as what Nietzsche says, it's like they muddy the waters to seem deep. So they're just a puddle that's just muddied, and you think it's deep, but it's actually really shallow. A lot of these experts are really not connected to reality. That's their problem. They're far disconnected from reality, but they have this a huge amount of knowledge that you just have to go like, well, they know, right? They're the experts. And it's like, no, the real experts have understanding. Does objective knowledge imply truth, though? No. Because there's people with objective reason, like the higher beings, can still be outsmarted by humans. Hence that chapter in Atlantis where the king of Atlantis and the guy from Mars. The guy from Mars had a high level of objective knowledge, but he kept making mistakes, and the king was like, oh. Now, well then, my boy, in order that the mentioned Zerno-Fukalian friction should be obtained, so this is a part of the true being understanding, is if you're really understanding, this friction should take place within you, and that is almost energetic. It's almost like you don't just learn something, you have to kind of sit down and ponder it and process it and have it become a part of you. And it's like this process, this digestion is what's important. Yes, the Prussian education system, says Tyler, has damaged our thinking. PhDs have done even more damage. Yeah, I mean, there's that thing about like doctors, as in literal doctors, like surgeons. They go through some insane training schedule, like they have to wake up at a certain time and do all these certain things, and it's all based off of this one guy in the 80s, because this one guy in the 80s just happened to be the head of the institute, and he's like, if I'm doing it, the students should be able to do it. And so like the schedule that all of these like kind of surgeons learning have to do, they have to stay up at night and do all this and do this placement here, and it's like, what they don't realize is it was done in the 80s, and it's this guy, I think they've found like through biographies and stuff, he was actually a coke addict. So they have PhD students or like actual doctors who wanted to be surgeons in America have to do this completely unreasonable schedules and completely destroy themselves to imitate a guy who was like going full overclocking on like on coke. So they just get addicted to Adderall to try and get through their like studies. It's like insane. But yeah, the education system, the Prussian education system and its consequences have been a disaster for our modern times. Where does intuition fit into this? Like sometimes you know things without thinking, like the opposite of thinking, you just know. So I would say, so this is interesting because there's two different types of intuition. There's an intuition that's like a build-up of understanding, and that intuition is a result of your being understanding. So that intuition is like you have so much being understanding that you don't need to calculate what you're presented with immediately. Like you can just intuit, you don't have to reason. So reason is you see a thing, you reason, and you end up at a conclusion. Intuition is there's perception and there's comprehension and there's no middle bit. So I usually use the example of chess masters and chess intuition. They've just played a million chess games that it's in them, and they have an understanding of the game so much that you can just like show them a chessboard like suddenly and they'll immediately just be like, black is winning or whatever, just via intuition. They don't actually calculate anything, they just know. That's the first type of intuition. The other type of intuition is when you kind of don't have that the context or the content, but understanding just arrives. And this is interesting because I think like meditation on the tarots explains this the best. That kind of intuition is the opposite of clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is where you have this, or you visionary experiences where you put yourself in this receptive state and then something higher impresses onto you and you represent it in a certain way and you gain this vision. So that's you being passive and something active coming and imprinting on you. Whereas intuition is when the other thing is active and you essentially go out, your essence connects with something and you gain knowledge via like direct essence contact. It's like that kind of intuition, to use a Gurdjieff terminology, would be like, that's the functioning of the higher cylinders, where it's just like kind of not your reason calculating, it's just the intuition just connecting and then drawing in data kind of directly. Whereas this, what we're talking about here is a build-up of knowledge, but that real knowledge, gnosis, understanding. So Gurdjieff isn't using the term gnosis, he's just using the term understanding here. Isn't the first type of intuition pretty much subconscious memory? You processed subconscious memory. Because, I mean, you know, you can go to the gym, you can go to a martial arts studio, you know, three days a week for like 10 years. But someone who really wants to learn and it really kind of absorbs it correctly and lets it sit in them, they can learn faster and learn in 2 years what, like, you know, took you 10, that kind of thing. It's not just subconscious memory, it's like almost like a structure that's built within you. And hence why this is just it. It's that type of intuition is the result of proper being understanding. It's a kind of an activity or a result of this reason understanding. Sorry. But anyway, Zerno-Foucaultian friction. Why does that happen though? Sorry, the second type of intuition. Why does it happen? Well, I mean, it's your essence. As in, you wanna know something, you wanna know it directly. It's more like, how do you kind of get that to happen? Which we gotta dive into Henry Bergson and Meditations of the Tara. Maybe I'll do that one day on live stream. Now, Zerno-Foucaultian friction should be obtained in beings, and that at the same time the crystallization of the new perceptions should proceed for the reason of understanding. I, already knowing very well what are called the laws of the fixing and unfixing of ideas and localizations. That's interesting. So he's basically saying impressions entering cylinders and becoming fixed or becoming unfixed. The details of which laws, so he not only knows this as a concept, but he even understands the laws and mechanics of how this happens. To mention it, by the way, I learned also, thanks to the three-brained beings who have taken your fancy, during my sojourn among them as professional hypnotist. So he learnt this through his, interesting, he learnt this through his hypnosis time as a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist is what I want to say. Some people give hypnosis a bad flack, and I understand there's some schools of thought that have, you know, when you talk about black magic, you can define it in all sorts of ways, black magic in all sorts of ways. One way to define black magic, if you're going to use that binary instead of high and low magic, is any type of magic or any type of means that takes the will of another person away from them, or you manipulate their will. That's seen as something gross. That's black magic. And so a lot of people who use that as a concept of black magic usually look at hypnosis as something kind of dark. But even in that framework, I would say, you know, there's a difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy. It's like using the methods of the subconscious to actually kind of heal people. That's not, you're not really like being gross and manipulating their will. You're actually kind of going into their subconscious. You can potentially do harm if you want to, but you're actually doing good. So had in view during my tales, among many other necessary principles in respect to the current perception of new information through guidance from without, always to keep also to the same inevitable rule, so that the gradualness of the enlarging of, as is said, the quintessence of the information should proceed in you with the entire absence of the being impulses of indignation, offense, vexation, and so forth. So when we learn things, we really need to bracket our reactions to them. You can't feel indignation or offense like, that's racist, or that's politically incorrect. If you have that classification and everything you learn you filter through offense or indignation, it's not going to work. You're not going to understand anything. Black belt, sorry. Just reading the chat, another guy thought black belts were usually attained by people that at least got some objective. I mean, depends if you're in a Mick dojo. It just means you've gone there long enough. Yeah, there you go. Marshall explained. In respect of the sequence of my information to you and of the results of your essence understanding. So yeah, that's interesting. He said quintessence here. So there's like this information build-up, this understanding, this energetic thing. It's almost like that's what also develops the essence. So it's not just sitting and self-remembering, not just I need to take myself away from society and just sit in bliss. It's like, no, you live in a society. We live in a society. So you engage and you try to comprehend and understand. And through this digesting of impressions, this also develops the essence. It's hard because it's like, you know, being in society, you constantly become identified and fall into fascination and just kind of dreaming. And you fall asleep constantly. Asleep, consciously asleep, not physically asleep. Your consciousness falls asleep constantly, so it's hard to stay in self-remembering, but it's like these like two parts to grow the essence. One is self-remembering, and this other is this digestion, this reason understanding, which is very important to digest this, to gain objective being reason. It's very interesting, because it seems like in some systems they're intellectually heavy. Like I think before this live stream started, we were talking about Manly P. Hall, who's very intellect heavy, and don't forget about the passions. And it's like it's almost like Manly P. Hall. What he did is he only gained objective being reason and just kind of left everything by the wayside. And maybe he didn't crystallize properly because he lacked, the vital force. He lacked vril and exiohari or something. But anyway, in respect of the sequence of my information to you, and of the results of your essence understanding, I must still tell you that if, when I first noticed your interest in the three-brained beings who arise on the planet Earth, I would have given from the very beginning concerning every event only my personal conviction, and the opinions which had become fixed in me. Oh, hello. In respect to the sequence of my information, I must tell you that if, when I first noticed your interest in the three-brained beings who arose on the Earth, I would have given from the very beginning concerning every event only my personal conviction and the opinions which had become fixed in me about them during the period of my observations, and only afterwards would have begun to give you the abundant and many-sided totality of information already related by me, then all these facts I related would have been taken in by you without your own being logical confrontation. So it would have gone in automatically without properly coming in and being digested properly. So he told this story to Hassian. Beelzebub told the story to Hassian in a particular way. In other words, Beelzebub is saying to us, Gurdjieff is saying to us, I wrote this book in a particular way because if I had just given it to you, it would have just been my opinions and you would have just passively accepted it and been like, yes, Gurdjieff, I agree. Humans are asleep. We need to awaken, and it would have just been passive. There would have been nothing active. We wouldn't have used our being logical confrontation of the data to crystallize it properly within us. Having crystallized for this information would have settled in your corresponding localizations only simply as information without any genuine understanding of them. Yes, so this Gurdjieff is saying this book is written like this because you wouldn't have understood it. You wouldn't have understood it unless it was hard to read, but because he made it hard to read, we have to confront it actively, and therefore we understand it. This is a very interesting... He veiled his work to unveil it. The veiling is a process of unveiling. If he just talked to us straight, we would have been passive and been like, yes, Gurdjieff, we agree, you're amazing. And we wouldn't have understood, but because he veiled it and made it hard to understand, we're actually truly able to understand. Mwah. Fantastic. Brilliant. Yes, Kimberly. Difference between learning or being told. We were able to learn instead of just being told. That is why, in all my tales about the three-brained beings who breed on the planet Earth, I was guided by this, that on the other hand, there should be crystallized in the corresponding localizations of your common presence many diversely formed data for your future being association concerning all the totalities or branches of objective knowledge. Hello, let me just read that again. That is why in the Earth, crystallized in the corresponding localizations of your common presence, many diversely formed data for your future being association concerning all the totalities or branches. That's interesting, the term branches. The branches of objective knowledge, because you can have objective knowledge of a thing, but that's just a branch of the tree. So to have the whole tree or to have a branch is a different thing. And on the other hand, that the process of Zerno-Fulcalnian friction should proceed intensively in your common presence, and that result should be obtained, which I have just witnessed in the way you answered my question. Why are you weeping? Why are you crying? What is that? Oh my god. Sorry, that just makes me laugh for some reason. Now, my boy, as I have already become more or less convinced that the time I have spent has not been in vain, that my tales about the three-brained beings of your planet, who have taken your fancy, have brought you the benefit I expected then, I think we might stop talking about them so as not to evoke the process of active mentation any longer. Besides, time is short, for we shall soon be on our dear planet. Nevertheless, my boy, nevertheless, I must now briefly explain and strictly command you that as long as our journey lasts, that is to say, as long as we speak about the three-brained beings of the planet Earth, you should try with the reason you have in your presence, so to arrange that certain of those functions which flow in you, and which in general give three-brained beings the possibility of active mentation, should remain inactive, or as is said, should rest. That is to say, those functions should rest in you which during this time participated more intensively than usual in your active mentation. I don't know, man. I'm not going to be deceived. Let's keep active mentation going. Of which, the functionings of which do not depend on the essence of beings, but depend exclusively on what is called the harmony of the common cosmic temper. By the way, you should always remember that the reason for any being and the intensity of the action of this reason depends on the correct functioning of all the separate parts of this whole presence. Hold on, what did you just say there? The reason of any being and the intensity of action of this reason depends on the correct functioning of all the separate parts of its whole presence. Is he saying like the reason a being exists? Or the reason as in the what level their reason is at depends on the functioning. Depends on the functioning of the separate parts of the whole of its present. Interesting. So there's the whole, and it has separate parts. And if the parts, yeah, okay, I get it now. Yeah, if the parts are functioning in unison, in unity, that will depend on its reason. Yeah, I get you. For instance, all the functionings of the planetary body and the body itself are the chief parts of a being, but the separate functionings, as well as the whole of this body itself without other of the spiritualized parts of the being, are only a dependent cosmic formation, conscious of nothing. And therefore, on the basis of what you once called the common universal pillar of justice, each spiritualized part of a being must always be just towards this dependent and unconscious part, and not require of it more than it is able to give. Interesting. Hold on a second. So he's saying the spirit needs to be like just with the physical, or the physical needs to be just with the undeveloped spiritual part? Let me just read that again. Without other spiritualized parts of the being are only dependent cosmic functions. So yeah, cosmic. So okay, conscious of nothing. So if we don't have a spiritualized part crystallized within us, so like a higher causal body, we're just a kind of a dependent cosmic formation. We're dependent on the laws of the trogo-auto-egocratic process to flow, and if we die, we just dissolve. So we're a dependent formation. So we're conscious of nothing. You know, we just have reason not. That means if you truly understand something, that understanding itself almost becomes a center of gravity in you that is able to perpetuate after death. Very interesting. And therefore, on the basis of what you once called the common universal pillar of justice, each spiritualized part of a being must always be just towards this dependent and unconscious part, and not require it to do more than it is able to give. Interesting. It kind of makes me wonder if, like, you can crystallize certain levels of understanding, but if you don't have a higher being body, there are some traditions that talk about when a person like that dies, these different kind of crystallizations actually disperse, but they don't dissolve, and they can kind of reincarnate into different people being born. Interesting. Just like everything else in the megalocosmos, in order that the planetary body of a being may correctly serve its chief part, that is to say, in order that this auxiliary part of the whole being should properly serve his essence itself, this essence must always be just and demands on it only according to its inherent possibilities. Let me just read that again. This is deep stuff, just like everything else in the megalocosmos. In order that the planetary body of a being, so your physical part, may correctly serve its chief part, that is to say, in order that this auxiliary part, the physical body is the auxiliary part, of the whole being should properly serve his essence. So the essence is the unseen part of you, the metaphysical part. This essence must always be just and make demand. Okay. So the essence can't demand the physical body to do more than it's kind of capable of. So if you get like really drained really easily, you can't be like, I don't know, self-remembering and park dog being dutying, 12 hours a day or something. You have to develop up to that point. So the work develops as it develops. You start at where you are. Howdy Ghoul in the chat. Howdy Coco. Besides this question of justice, it is necessary to act toward the unconscious part of a being in such a way as to make it possible for certain functions to remain inactive from time to time, in order that it might be always possible for this unconscious part gradually and in its time to blend its newly acquired subjective tempos with the objective tempos of our common megalocosmos. Okay, and so this is why we sometimes go into a repose and why it is sometimes good to rest. And you're not always on, not always like, I gotta be self-remembering, using my active mentation to like understand these. Sometimes just read for leisure, just do things for leisure. Be in a repose, release that, allow it to be. And allow your subjective tempos to kind of digest and align with allow your individual soul to align with the universal soul or the world soul. This is very Neoplatonic now. This is very Neoplatonic. Dylan in the chat, I may be the reincarnation of Hitler. Not 100% sure, trying to remember. No, just a little piece of Hitler went into you, and that's why you distrust certain people. Yes, Marshall, have a rest day. One must notice that in the megalocosmos, the blending of tempos proceeds only Kaznuk Kizkernian, that is, as your favorites would say, with law-confirmable gradualness. And so if you wish that your active mentation during your future responsible existence should proceed correctly and productively, you must now, if such a mentation has already begun in you, if such an inner process has undesirable consequences for your planetary body, not occupy yourself at all for a while with such mentation. That's interesting. So he's basically giving a clue here. What Gurdjieff is telling us through Beelzebub Tahassian here is if you're already like an old man and you suspect that you have wrong being reason crystallized within you, just don't absorb anything. Just like allow yourself to just kind of rest, go on a fast, but like an intellectual fast, and just allow everything to kind of reset. And then as long as you're able to kind of like allow it to reset, then you can kind of restart your kind of studies, and your mentation should kind of start to align properly. However much you may like it, and however greatly it may interest you otherwise, hold on a second. How is he supposed to? So, Dezona kua sans. Dezona qua sans will result in you, that is to say, only one part of your whole presence will acquire another tempo, and in consequence, you will become again, as your favorites would say, lopsided. Interesting, hold on. Yeah, so if you come into this work with the wrong active mentation, you will only take the work intellectually and you'll be lopsided. So you really need to take in the work and then just kind of leave it. Just let it sit and digest in you. That's what he's recommending. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. Is this a description of cognitive dissonance? No, it just seems to be a description of, like, you know, if you're just doing it just seems to be a description of, like, using only one cylinder. He's basically saying, like, now that I've taught you about reason knowing and reason understanding, don't for a second think that now that I've taught you that you've been reason understanding this, like, you know, entire time. It could be that, you know, if you've come into this a little too late, you may have just absorbed this with your reason understanding. So it's like, hold on, just let it sit, just let it sit. Just let it sit and digest and come back to it. Because if you just keep going and, like, if you try to be an American about it, it's not gonna work out. You'll be lopsided. There's like a bit in Thus Spake Zarathustra about Nietzsche, where he, like, you know, Zarathustra, where he comes to the city and he tells everyone about the Superman, and there's all these weird bits with, like, the fool on the tightrope and all of that stuff. There's one bit in Thus Spake Zarathustra when he's still in the city and he's talking to the crowd, and the crowd parts and there's, like, a midget. Or a dwarf, sorry, I shouldn't say. There's, like, a dwarf with, like, a giant ear. And the dwarf is kind of like this evil character that kind of is the antithesis to Zarathustra. But when the dwarf is, like, introduced, Nietzsche kind of goes off on this tangent and he starts, like, describing what this kind of dwarf is. He says there are people in the world who are lopsided. Like, there are people who only are stomach and they can, you know, eat and eat and eat. Or there are people who are only this or only that. But because they are like this, it's like, you know, when a person is deaf, their eyesight increases and becomes very, like, clear, because that's the only tool they have to use. Or if they're blind, their ears become, like, you know, hyper, like, echolocation. It's almost like they can see with their ears. And he says these abilities that these people have, normal people will mistake them for the Superman, but actually they're just lopsided being. So in the same way that a deaf man is all eyes, or there are some people who are all stomach, this little dwarf, he has this large ear to kind of show that he's, like, lopsided. So it's like this dwarf, what is it like a dwarf symbolically, is someone who, arms and legs, you know, your legs are what you walk the path with, your arms are what you interact with the world with. So it's like this thing that's actually disabled. It can't actually work properly in the world, but it's completely lopsided. It's just all intellect. And so he's basically saying, Nietzsche is basically saying that, like, his Zarathustra that he's presenting to the world, the crowd will provide their own antithesis to his works, but the antithesis will just be this weak kind of person who's only intellect and not balanced at all. In a similar way, Gurdjieff is basically saying, you know, watch out, you may be the dwarf kind of with the big ear. If you're just kind of allowing this to go to your intellect, you don't want it to be this lopsided thing. Just allow it to sit. Just allow it to sit and allow it to digest. How long does the digestion take? Well, another guy asked, well, you need the acting method, another guy. As long as you... No, I'm just kidding. Although there's kind of like a little bit of esoteric truth to that. Lord of Mysteries reference. How long does the digestive... So that'll depend on each and every person. But it's not like you're going to... You know, you don't have to wait 10 years. And I kind of think you can still... That's why I promote... People will say, like, you know, you need to study something, you know, read something and take notes. And I actually think there is something to having leisure time and just reading something as a form of leisure and letting it sit in you and just having a time where you do nothing and you just kind of sit. It's not even a meditation thing. Like, when you meditate, you're doing a technique, you're focusing on this or you're visualizing that. Just have a time when you sit and you just, like, allow your mind to just kind of churn and ponder and just kind of sit. And it's like this promotes digestion. As you digest, you can keep learning. So I would actually say you can just, yeah, no doom scrolling while you're doing this. It's almost like a part of this digestion also, let's be real here and take what he's saying. You need the, what is it, Otto-Zur-Kilner principle to be there, which means, you know, try to be balanced in your life as possible. In your kind of like, you know, self-remember as much as possible, but as you're kind of working, as you're doing your reading, as you're doing your study, as you're digesting, as you're working in life, as you're trying to self-remember, as you're trying to lead a balanced life, all of this action of trying and then kind of being in repose, it should have a certain effects. Things should crystallize in you in an appropriate way. Craig Howard says the tobacco pipe effect? I don't know what that is. You know, if you understand something, because that's just the other thing as well. It's like self-remembering isn't an intellectual technique. It's something done, like, you know, all of you do it. Like every single part of you, it's like, what's the, you know, in self-observation as well, you're not just observing your thoughts. What about your motor cylinder? What about your emotional cylinder? So it's these things kind of come together. Just made it up. Just that pipe tobacco takes a long time to smoke and forces you to slow down. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. We should all take up smoking pipes to properly digest Gurdjieff's work. By the way, most of your favorites, particularly the contemporary ones, because it's like, I'm sorry, I'm just refreshing, just gonna keep going off on this tangent here. It's like, you know how like people will say something like, I tried and I tried and I tried, and then I gave up and it happened. That's what it's kind of like with the work. It's like you can try and try and try and try all these techniques and, oh, is self-remembering working? Am I self-observing really? But it's like, and it's not about giving up. It's like the difference, to be gay and new agey, what's the difference between giving up and letting go? But like, in all seriousness, there's something to that. It's like, you're not giving up, but there's this having your work allowed to be in a repose. That's just the key he's kind of giving it. Allow it, because, you know, it's heavy intellectual. You know, there's movements, there's listening to music that you can do to activate your emotional cylinder, there's the Gurdjieff movements you can do, but, you know, do martial arts, do yoga, listen to music that you like, activate all the parts of your being, but also just have time where you just kind of let all of the cylinders rest. And just kind of, because this is just it. Pakdal being duty requires your cylinders to be aligned. Now, in the work, you want them to be aligned while you're doing an activity. But here's the thing. If you're in a completely passive state, your mind is passive. Your emotions are neutral. You know, your motor cylinder is relaxed. There's no habits going on in it. There's no impulses. What's happening? There's nothing kind of churning in the intellectual cylinder. There's nothing in the emotional cylinder. There's nothing in the motor cylinder. There's nothing in there. Meaning that what? Meaning that technically all of the cylinders are doing the same thing, meaning that they're aligned. So technically, it's a kind of a, even though Gurdjieff is like, no, you need to do the work actively, this proper resting kind of aligns the cylinders, but in a passive way. Hence why you can't just be like, oh, I'm doing the work and passively sit on the couch and be lazy. No, the work requires activity, but by doing this pacification, technically your cylinders are aligning. And if your cylinders are working together, that's almost like a pseudo higher cylinder. It's very interesting. Yes, your rest should be in a, well, yeah. I'm not sure if I made myself clear. I'm kind of like, as I'm rambling, I'm like, am I just like muddying the waters here, bro? Hopefully you can make out through my rambling. And even then, this is just my rambling. It's like you gotta like take this and actualize it. And it's like, what I'm saying may not work for you. You have to kind of develop the system yourself. Otherwise, you know what Gurdjieff was saying about, like, if I didn't speak in this way, you would just kind of take it and be like, yes, Gurdjieff. Well, it's like, this is the same thing with me. It's like, if you just kind of, you can't just be like, yes, Richard, passively relax. It's like, you fall into the dichotomy either way. Hey, that's a good one, Kimberly. Do the work, then rest, and let the work do you. No, that's good. That's good. That's actually good. I think dreams are definitely not rest. That's just it. Dreaming is kind of the activity of, it's an activity of the intellectual center. It's fantasy, which you don't want to be in. But this is the thing. It's like, I know Gurdjieff is really against imagination, but it's mechanical imagination that he's against. So something like Jungian active imagination, or Henri Corbin's The Imaginal, and certain esoteric practices, it's not the same, but it's so easy to fall into delusion with them that Gurdjieff just avoids it and just says, don't do imagination stuff. I'm here for the muddy waters. They clear up after the stream. Yes, exactly. Jill Robert. Yes, Richard. No. No, it should be yes and no, Richard, at the same time. Now, what are we up to? Yeah, you don't want to be lopsided. In short, only by a gradual change of the tempo of one part of the whole is it possible to change the tempo of all this whole without injuring it. Yeah, so this is the other thing. Some people, what do we want out of this? We want a change to well-being. We want actual qualitative change, not a quantitative change. We don't want to change what we wear and change this, and now I think this, and now it was like, oh, have you seen this? My new guru is Gurdjieff. It's so good. And then the next week we're on to another, we're back to Deepak Chopra or something. We don't want to just change quantitatively and switch different values. We want a qualitative change, a permanent change to our being. But people want the entire shift instantaneously, and that's not going to happen. You have to change one part at a time. It's this slow transformation. That's what Gurdjieff promotes. Gurdjieff promotes a path that's not easy and it's slow, but it's honest. Whereas other gurus are like, let me pay $1 million and I'll lay my hands on you and Shaktipat, boom, Kundalini will awaken and your life will change. And it's like, Gurdjieff doesn't promote that. And I gotta say, I gotta admit, I don't think that is a possibility whatsoever. Actually, let's go off on a tangent here. I heard this story once, and this is crazy ass story. So I was talking to an acupuncturist, and he was talking about how he had this one client who was a part of the Hells Angels. So this Hells Angels biker came to him to get acupuncture, a little bit of healing. And he was talking with this Hells Angels guy, like, what is it like? What's it like being a member of the Hells Angels? And the guy said, oh, I'm not actually a member anymore. And for those who don't know, if you're a member of the Hells Angels or like a biker gang similar to that, if you want to stop being a member, what do you call it? To use a good different, the decrystallization ritual, you have to go through an exit ritual. And the exit ritual is you go to a bar usually owned by one of the members. So there's no one in the bar but other members. And they open the door to the entrance of the bar. And they all line up at the entrance, like 2 lines of them, like kind of a military thing. And they all basically have baseball bats and table legs and stuff like that. And they're not allowed to move off the spot that they're standing in, but you have to run down the line and basically run out the door. And they all get to just swing at you trying to kill you. And if you make it out the door, then you leave, and you're no longer a Hells Angels. That's the like ritual for leaving the Hells Angels. Apparently, once again, I'm not a member. I don't like research this stuff. I haven't heard any other things. This is just what the guy said. The guy kind of said it's like, and the gauntlet basically. And so the acupuncturist was like, "Oh, did you have to do the gauntlet thing?" Because apparently this is a thing that's known. I didn't know this. And he's like, "Did you have to do the gauntlet thing?" And this Hells Angels guy was like, "No. I actually was, because I was in and I was like, man, and he like really was hating it. And he was like, he wanted to leave for ages, but he didn't want to do the gauntlet. And then he said basically the whole kind of thing broke apart and became a mess because the leader broke it up. The leader actually left. Oh, and like basically was like kind of, and because the leader wanted to leave it, like everything was in chaos, and this member was able to slip away. And the acupuncturist was like, oh, what happened? What happened to the leader? And he basically said the leader of the Hells Angels at this time was this giant 6'6" guy, like a coke machine with legs. He had swastikas tattooed on his face, and his name was Bear. And he said Bear, like they lived in this house, or in the center where they always collected at. Bear would like sleep in the kind of the top of the place, and he'd come down in the mornings and like give the orders out. And he said one morning, Bear just came down, and he was different. And he said it was like all of the hate had just been taken out of him. And he said, basically all he said was, the light. That was the light. And like, apparently just what happened like the night before, something came to him, this big light, and it just changed him. And he said Bear basically just became like a different person. And like the addendum to the story is Bear basically went to a Christian church, converted to Christianity, became a Christian, married a small Asian lady, moved to Thailand, and started, what was it? He started an orphanage. And it's just like this ultra random, like, what? And I'm like, man, imagine, I'm just like imagining a guy with like swastikas on his face, like talking to like a Christian Asian girl, just being like, hey, you want to go out sometime? Like, what the hell? But I'm like, what? And it's like, this is crazy, because this is like a case of, this is what I call the mysticism, or the mystic. This is the path of the mystic, which isn't really a path. It's when the thing on the other side of the veil pierces the veil and pulls you up. It pulls you along. Some people experience that, and that's their spiritual path. And they gain this huge change. And it's like, that happens. It's like a lightning strike. They get struck by lightning and they gain this enlightenment or whatever, or they become a different person. Good for them. This doesn't happen to everybody, and it's completely unreasonable to like exist in a way as if this is going to happen to everybody. And this is why I like really hate New Age slop, which is like, you just need to be, man. Just need to be. Just, there is no path. You're already a master. And it's like, oh, those people. And then it's like, and you can't say anything, because as soon as you say anything, they're like, that's just your ego, man. And that's just, and it's like, oh my fucking God. Oh. The New Age, these are the New Age slop people that, and the reality is they're egoic, and their spirituality is like a pseudo-spirituality, a spiritual materialism that just allows them to be this pseudo-spiritual person and just kind of indulge in that. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Trust me, bro. You're a god in the flesh, bro. We're all masters, bro. We're just here to experience the world. We're all one, bro. And it's like, look, there is something to the we all are one in an absolute sense, like a Vedantic sense, the Neoplatonic one, in the absolute sense, yeah, we're all one, but we're not in the absolute. We're down in the shit, right here with each other. You experience the world fundamentally as a being separate from me. You can't look into me and see my thoughts, and I can't look into you and see the invisible part of you. So there's something wrong. There's something in the way. And if you don't deal with that and deal with it in a real way, you're full of shit. Yeah, exactly. And it's also heavily drug-based, which leads to delusion more often than not. And it's like, bruh, there's nothing real there. Even, so I mention Bear and his freaking crazy experience, which apparently, so once again, I don't even know if that's true. This isn't just like, trust me, bro, a friend told me. This is like this is like from a Hells Angels guy who got told to an acupuncturist who then told me. So it's like, and then I'm telling you, it's like, this is like This is octaves, degrees of separation. So I have no idea how true this story is, but it's like I'm mentioning this to tell you, yeah, it's possible that the entire tempo of your being could change in one leap, but it's completely unreasonable to rely on that as if it's just a certainty. You should do the work as if that's never gonna happen. You should do the work as if all the masters are dead and the world has been abandoned by the gods, and it's like everyone's a Hasnamusen, and you just gotta like, no, I need to get out of here. I need to do the work. If I don't do the work, this is the last life. I'm just gonna decrystallize if I don't do it. Not to like get you in a panic state and have you in a state of angst, but you need to be like serious, man. You need to like memento mori, like this death. This is just it. This is the last thing. I'm gonna fucking do this. I'm dying with my boots on. Like I don't even care if I don't achieve the solar causal body. Whatever. Like I'm gonna do the work no matter what. That's the attitude you need to have. Yeah, there needs to be a certain amount of urgency, but at the same time, you don't become like, don't allow it to become like a paranoid dysfunction within you. There's an alchemical saying where it's like, it is urgent to acquire patience, or there's another one that's like, make haste slowly. It's like this understanding, you need to get there, but at the same time, you change one step. The change happens one step at a time. Don't you know? It's unreasonable to like change the entire thing all at once. You change your tempo, one bit at a time. One bit at a time. One bit at a time, guys. If I had another guy, if I attained the Tao in the morning, I'm content with dying in the evening. Yes. Yes. That would be great. I mean, that would be amazing to die in a state of samadhi. That would be like the best. That would be the best. Oh, our tuition. That's a great line. There are many paths that lead to the fewer elite paths, and those paths then lead to your path. Poo-poo while you pee-pee slowly. Very good, Dylan. Very good. I love that. I love that. That's just... Triple constraint theory. Ah, that's interesting, our tuition. Easy, fast, right. Easy, fast, and right. Pick two. If it's easy and fast, it's not right. Yes. Balls deep, guys. We're going balls deep. Yeah. So don't force it and don't rush it. It's this thing, you need to be patient and you need to be slow, but there needs to be a tenacity there. There needs to be a consistency. Don't let the slowness and the patience and the slowness let you drift. Because it's almost like you're climbing up a mountain, and if you drift, you fall. But you gotta go this slow. You need to have the consistency of this like mountain goat. The qualities of like an ibex, a mountain goat, just kind of one step at a time going up the mountain. You never go backwards, but you don't just like make one leap to the top of the mountain, one step at a time. I find it necessary to repeat that the active mentation in a being and the useful results of such active mentation are in reality actualized exclusively only with the equal degree functionings of all his three localizations. The three localizations, the main cylinders, the intellect, emotion, the intellect, the emotion, and the motor. Of the results of the results spiritualized in his presence, called thinking center, feeling center. Okay, yeah, that's what he's saying. Yeah. I find it necessary to repeat active mentation in a being and the useful results of such active mentation. So it's not just we got to actively mentate while reading, guys. We got to get the useful results of active mentation. And these useful results must be actualized. He says actualized exclusively, but he means actualized alongside the equal degree functioning, so the balanced working of the human machine. Whew, that's hot. That's hot. Martial esotericist, do you think Ouspensky ever achieved objective consciousness and crystallized higher being bodies? So there's an interesting story about Ouspensky. When he died, his greatest student, a guy called Rodney Collins, was a little bit autistic. So there's a story of when Ouspensky died, he knew he was going to die, and he requested to go on a car ride. And Rodney Collins was the guy who drove him. So the story is Rodney Collins hops in the car and Ouspensky hops in the back, and they go for a drive through the countryside. And when they arrive back, Ouspensky's dead in the back seat. Rodney Collins jumps out of the driver's seat and runs up to Ouspensky's study and locks himself in. And he stays in there for 6 days fasting and meditating. And when he comes out, he says, Ouspensky has become a solar being. And he's commanded me to go to South America because a new world is beginning. And so Rodney Collins went to South America and opened Gurdjieff groups there. That's why, like, if you see online, there's a lot of like Spanish copies and translations of the Fourth Way work that are like from like way back from the 60s, because Rodney Collins, when Ouspensky died in 1946, the same year as Dion Fortune, I believe. And so Rodney Collins basically left. He must have arrived there maybe like 1950s, and then Rodney Collins himself, I believe, died in 1958 maybe. And so for 8 years, he was trying to crystallize groups in South America. So it's like, anyway, that's a little tangent there. But Marshall, do you think Ouspensky ever crystallized? I think Ouspensky is a gold standard. I really do think. I think, he had his own idiosyncratic ideas, but that's good. I think Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, they're the two gold standards. They're the two gold standards. And then on top of that, I would say Maurice Nicole is another interesting guy to look into, because he was a student of Jung. And then he went to an Ouspensky lecture and was like, this is it, and abandoned Jung and like went full Fourth Way. And the other guy is Rodney. A lot of people don't like Rodney Collins because he said that, and people are like, oh, he's delusional. He's just making stuff up. And it's like, I don't know, man. Rodney had something going. Rodney had something going for himself. And it's like that. And then it's like, I think Boris Muraviev definitely has something going for him, even though he's a little crazy as well. Boris Muraviev is this guy who came along and was like, the Fourth Way, I'm going to start the Fifth Way. And it's just like, it's kind of cringe, but at the same time, it's fire. And Fritz Peters is the other guy I think attained something. But there's not much about Fritz Peters on it. And I think he just wrote a book called My Boyhood with Gurdjieff. He was a really young kid who just happened to learn from Gurdjieff. And him and Gurdjieff like connected. Like really like on an essence level. And who else do I think? Oak de Boer is a more modern practitioner. He wrote the book Higher Being Bodies, which there's some things in it which I'm like, but I'm like, you know what? He gives solid advice. And I gotta read more. I haven't read any Bennett or anything, but people seem to respect Bennett and Hartman and stuff like that. And I'm like, sure, cool. I'm sure there's a lot of good stuff out there, but those are the ones in my mind are like, they're kind of like gold standard. They have something. Anyway, we've reached the end here. I'm just going to read some of the comments. Out tuition. I wanted to say I loved your talk with David Pantano. Oh, but a lot of it felt like pretty specific, deep cut talk. Not a bad thing at all, since it gave me a lot to look into. Yeah. So the thing with that is like, I looked at a bunch of other interviews and a lot of it was very surface level. So I kind of wanted to like go deep, but it kind of like, I'm not sure if it shows up in the interview, but I was like super nervous, pee-pee pooping in my pants while I was talking to him. So when I was like finished, I was like, oh man, because I just felt like I was all over the place. But on the same level, it allowed me to like kind of get some of the answers that I wanted to. I enjoy, and he seemed to enjoy it. And afterwards, he was like, "Yeah, let's do it again sometime." And I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah!" So he's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. Thank you, Art Tuition. Another guy asked, "Did it work?" I honestly found out about Gurdjieff from this channel. I'm not sure what you're asking. Did it work too? About if that's the other thing. Anyway. Interesting, the Orthodox also say that all saints know when they're going to die. Yeah, I mean, if you know when you're going to die, that's a sign that you've got your shit together to a higher degree. I see the opposition between Gurdjieff. Marshall says, see the opposition between Gurdjieff and Jung. One seeks to overcome active imagination while the other fixates on it. I mean, the thing about Jung is, like, Jung regrets creating Jungians. There's a bit, like, he doesn't seem, like, if Jung reincarnated and was alive today, he wouldn't want anything to do with the Jungians. Let's make that very clear. Jung really wanted to go deep and discuss the subconsciousness, and there's something that he reaches towards to the end of his life that's transcendental, I think. But anyway, I need to study Jung more, because I haven't studied him nearly enough. I don't know nearly as much as other people. But the main kind of process seems to kind of be this visionary thing. But Jung seems to have had some quality. He was able to, you know, disassociate, such a bad word, but he was able to remain objective. It's like almost a part of him had objective being reason, and then it was just his entire life was kind of him processing. And yeah, and he just kind of had things sorted. But to get a person with a lot of dysfunctions and traumas and be like, yeah, active imagination, especially someone who is really visual already, a lot of it can lead to delusion. Thanks for the $5, Kimberly. Cheeks? I just like wrote that in there. I didn't know it in the donation box. Self-dribbling basketball. Reading In Search of Miraculous. Just finished Red Lion. Fantastic book, Red Lion. Reading In Search, great. That's the best place to start, in my opinion. A lot of people say Ouspensky's other work, The Possible Evolution of Man, or whatever that book is called, the really thin one, you recommend that's for a start. And it's good. I understand why they recommend that. The only reason I say against that is it's not a narrative, it's just a bunch of letters. Whereas because In Search is a narrative, something about it, I think, strikes more of the cylinders, if you know what I mean. Where, I mean, look, the psychological possibility of man's evolution is a great book and should be read, but I think In Search is the quintessential best starting point. Did his power level intimidate you? Oh, is this the Pantano thing? Nah, I mean, you know, he's a professional. I'm just some, like, dork on the internet. So I'm just kind of like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, he knows, like, 3 different languages and is actually, like, you know, a member of a cool, I mean, you know, secret stuff, but he's a member of an organization, and I'm just like, you know, I'm just some guy. I'm like, daddy. But anyway, no, he was cool. The guy that spread Gurdjieff stuff in South America. Oh, did he make it? Oh, Rodney Collins. I think he did. A lot of people don't like him and say he didn't. He was just delusional, but I think he definitely did. His main books is Theory of Conscious Evolution and Theory of Celestial Influence, which Theory of Celestial Influence has, like, if someone republishes that and has a new edition, send it to me in Telegram, bro, because the only things I can find are, like, the old editions, and they're all like $120 on Amazon, and I'm like, whereas Theory of Conscious Evolution you can get kind of quite easily. I've got it on my bookshelf, but that's just a bunch of kind of, like, what do you call it, sayings, just a bunch of stuff. So it's like, whatever. Jung is a Gnostic, would go full bore. Yes, he was. Also Dylan with the 555. Thank you. Fifth way, baby. We're going full dung. Dung comes from the cheeks, exactly. It's transmutation, baby. Red Book is a fascinating deep dive. Yes, it is. Red Book. Sorry, yes, Red Book. We're talking about Jung? Yes. Maybe that could be another one for future. Seven Sermons is wild as well. Yeah, a lot of his stuff is wild. A lot of his stuff is wild. Jung was good. Jung was good. It's the Jungians that have a problem. You know, just like Steiner. Steiner's good, but then you go to like an anthroposophical association and they're all like, Steiner said, and you ask them questions. They're like, well, Steiner said, and it's just after a while, you're just like, what do you say? But, bruh, what do you say? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any ideas of your own? That's the problem with these people. If Steiner reincarnated today, he would want nothing to do with Steiner schooling or the Steiner societies. Jung wrote a book that he took no credit for. Channeled a bit there. I don't know. People just talking. Redline is so good. Hell yeah. Oh. Lol, I feel that. My local bookstore had a Life is Real only when I am. So many reread that after. Oh, okay, that's cool. Telegram should be in the description. Red Book, Red Priest. In fact, Manly P. Hall said about Crowley, here's an example how low the intellect can go in the pursuit of art. Yes, that's a story of Manly P. Hall had a huge art collection, but in his study, he kept like a framed picture of one of Aleister Crowley's poems, like hung on the wall. And when people would ask him about it, and he's like, just ignore it. And I think it was like one of his wives finally got it out of him, like, why do you keep that there? Because, you know, Crowley's poems are just gross. And when that was his reply, he said, I keep it there to always remind myself about how low the intellect of man can go. That's why he had a framed poem of Aleister Crowley in his study. I was surprised how much I enjoyed Redline. Redline's so good. Redline is so good. Anyway, we're just having a little chill here, guys, because we finished the chapter. Chapter 47 next week. Chapter 47 next week. Let's go. Thank y'all for staying at the end of there and just having a little chat. It was really good. We'll convene again next week for chapter 47, second to last chapter. Second to last chapter. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Getting to the end. It's the end of an era. We've been going for a year. Just us together. Just group hug, guys. Just group hug. I'll see you all next week.